The whirring of the sewing machine was a familiar lullaby in my life. Here at the Whispering Silk, my atelier, white fabric whispered secrets of upcoming weddings, and lace sighed with anticipation of a lifetime of love. But today, the rhythmic hum did little to soothe the knot forming in my stomach. John, my ever-supportive husband, poked his head through the doorway, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Heard the news from Sarah?" I sighed, threading a needle with practiced ease. "About Beatrice's 4th rodeo down the aisle?" "Yeah, Sarah spilled the beans this morning." Beatrice, John's older sister, was a walking contradiction. Dressed head to toe in designer labels, she exuded an air of entitlement that could curdle milk. Her marriages, however, were a different story, 3 quick trips down the aisle and even faster exits, leaving a trail of bewildered ex-husbands in their wake. John chuckled. "Brace yourself, Ames. Knowing B, that woman wouldn't know the meaning of reasonable if it bit her designer purse." I snorted. "You're telling me. Remember the meltdown she had over the shade of taupe for her bridesmaid dresses? It was like the apocalypse was upon us." The memory still made me roll my eyes. Beatrice had a knack for turning even the most mundane detail into a 5-alarm fire. Just then, the doorbell chimed, its shrill ring shattering the peaceful hum of the workshop. John raised an eyebrow. "Early for an evening fitting, isn't it?" I exchanged a look with him, a silent premonition hanging heavy in the air. "Let's just say," I muttered, heading towards the door, "I wouldn't be surprised if a certain someone decided to grace us with her presence a little early." Swinging the door open, I was greeted by the sight of Beatrice, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against a Louis Vuitton clutch. Her lips were pursed in a disapproving line, a stark contrast to the bright, eager faces of the brides-to-be who usually graced my doorstep. "Amelia," she drawled, her voice dripping with condescension. "Lovely to see you. I trust you've cleared your schedule for the next few months." I forced a smile, my teeth gritting together. "Actually, Beatrice, I have quite a few brides already booked in." Yes, darlings in their first weddings," she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "But this, my dear, is my 4th. A milestone occasion. Surely you wouldn't deny your own sister the privilege of having you design her dress?" Sister-in-law might be a generous term for Beatrice. We tolerated each other at best, and the thought of spending months working on her wedding dress filled me with dread. "Of course, Beatrice," I gritted out, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "But designing a wedding dress is a meticulous process, it takes time and—" Beatrice cut me off with a haughty sniff. "Time is money, darling, and I'm more than willing to pay for your expertise." Her voice dripped with sarcasm, the implication clear. She considered my talent a mere service, not an art form. "Actually, Beatrice," I began, a steely resolve forming in my chest. "My usual fee for a wedding dress of this caliber is $5,000. "Absolutely outrageous," she sputtered, clutching her pearls in mock horror. "For a simple dress for a 4th wedding? Come on, Amelia, be reasonable." "Beatrice," I said, my voice firm, "the intricacy of the design, the quality of the fabric, these all factor into the price." She scoffed. "Intricacy? Honey, I'm thinking simple elegance. Maybe a touch of lace, some pearls, a white fabric, nothing too over the top, you know, considering it's not exactly my first rodeo." My jaw clenched. "White for a 4th wedding isn't exactly simple elegance, Beatrice. Perhaps a more understated color would be more appropriate?" A dangerous glint flickered in her eyes. "Don't even think about suggesting that dusty rose monstrosity you foisted on Sarah. White is the color of purity, Amelia, and purity is exactly what I'm aiming for." Purity? The woman had 3 ex-husbands and a trail of broken hearts a mile long. Purity was the last word I'd associate with Beatrice. "Look, Beatrice," I sighed, trying a different approach. "How about we take a look at some sketches, discuss some fabrics, and then we can talk about the price?" The next hour was a masterclass in frustration. Beatrice shot down every design suggestion, wrinkled her nose at every fabric swatch, and insisted on adding more and more bling to every iteration. "More crystals here," she'd say, tapping a sketch with a perfectly manicured nail. "And a longer train, don't you think? A girl can never have too much train on her wedding day." I gritted my teeth, reminding myself that Beatrice's outrageous demands wouldn't pay the bills if I didn't somehow placate her. Finally, after an eternity of back and forth, we settled on a design, a white, strapless gown with a voluminous skirt and enough crystals to blind a small country. "And the price for this masterpiece?" Beatrice drawled, leaning back in a plush armchair. "Taking into account the complexity of the design and the—" I hesitated, searching for a polite way to phrase it, "extravagant amount of embellishments, the total comes to $3,000. Beatrice's eyes widened. "3,000? Are you serious, Amelia? That's highway robbery." "It's a fair price," I countered, my voice firm. "My team and I will be putting in countless hours to create this dress." "Look," she said, her voice softening into a feigned sweetness. "How about a little family discount? Sisters-in-law should look out for each other, shouldn't they?" I stared at her, incredulous. A family discount after all the insults and demands? The audacity of the woman. "Beatrice," I said, taking a deep breath, "consider this my final offer, $3,000. Not a penny less." In the end, she agreed, but as if she had done me a favor. A few weeks passed, and at the next fitting she made a shocking statement. "Considering this is a family affair," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "and all, I was thinking maybe we could skip the whole money exchange thing." My jaw dropped. "Skip the money exchange? Beatrice, this dress took weeks to create. My team and I put in countless hours." "Look, sweetie," she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand, "think of it as a wedding gift from your dear sister-in-law. A way to show you support my fourth trip down the aisle." My blood pressure skyrocketed. $3,000 was a significant chunk of change, not to mention the countless hours of labor. A free dress? As a wedding gift? The audacity of the woman. "Beatrice," I said, my voice tight with anger, "I already cut you a 30% discount. My team deserves to be paid for their work." She scoffed. "Oh, come on, Amelia. Don't be so petty. It's just a dress. Besides, think of the exposure. Having me, Beatrice Kensington, wearing your creation at my wedding? Priceless publicity, darling." Priceless publicity? This woman truly lived in a world of her own delusions. There was no way I was letting her walk all over me, and my business. "Beatrice," I said, my voice firm, "my final offer is $3,000. Not a penny less." Her smile evaporated, replaced by a thunderous frown. "Fine," she spat, her voice laced with venom. "But don't think this is over, Amelia. You'll regret crossing me." With that, she stormed out of the atelier, leaving me speechless and fuming. That evening, I recounted the whole ordeal to John, expecting him to be on my side. To my relief, he was. "The woman's delusional," he said, shaking his head. $3,000 is more than fair. You don't owe her a single stitch for free." Just as I started to relax, the phone rang. It was Beatrice's mother, my mother-in-law. My stomach lurched. Dealing with one Beatrice was enough, the thought of placating both of them filled me with dread. "Amelia," my mother-in-law began, her voice laced with concern, "I heard about the disagreement with Beatrice. Please, can't you just make the dress for her? As a wedding gift from our family?" My heart sank. A part of me wanted to refuse, to stand my ground. But another part, the more sentimental part, couldn't bear to disappoint my kind mother-in-law. "All right," I sighed, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "But consider it a gift from John and me. Not a freebie." My mother-in-law let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Amelia," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "Beatrice has a way with words, but I know she appreciates your talent. This dress will mean a lot to her." I wasn't so sure about that, but I held my tongue. The last thing I needed was another fight, especially with my mother-in-law. The dress was coming together beautifully, a masterpiece of white lace and delicate hand-sewn details. Every stitch held a silent testament to the countless hours I and my team had poured into creating Beatrice's dream wedding gown. Yet, the joy of creation was overshadowed by the constant tension of her upcoming visit. A week before the wedding, Sarah, one of my closest friends and Beatrice's acquaintance, called. We chatted about the upcoming wedding, the excitement bubbling in her voice. "Can you believe it's almost here?" she gushed. "I even took a peek at the guest list the other day." Guest list? My stomach lurched, a flicker of unease sparking within me. Guest list? I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Beatrice hadn't explicitly mentioned a guest list, but I assumed I would be included as a family member. "Yeah," Sarah said, oblivious to my sudden apprehension. "It's quite a crowd, all the A-listers and socialites Beatrice has been bragging about." A cold dread crept into my limbs. "And everyone's invited?" I asked, my voice strained. "Everyone who matters, of course," Sarah replied casually. Then, sensing a shift in my tone, she added, "Why, Amelia? Is something wrong?" Unable to hold back the rising panic, I blurted out, "Am I on the list, Sarah?" Silence stretched on the other end of the phone. "Amelia, I don't see your name." The blood drained from my face. "You don't see my name?" I repeated, the words hollow and disbelieving. A wave of sympathy washed over Sarah's voice. "Hold on, let me double-check." There was a rustling of paper, followed by another heavy silence. "No, Amelia," she finally admitted, a hint of sorrow in her tone. "Your name definitely isn't there." Shock morphed into anger. Beatrice, after all the work, the endless revisions, and the exorbitant cost, had the audacity to exclude me from her wedding? My hands clenched into fists. I hung up, my mind reeling. John entered the room, just then, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's wrong, Ains? You look like you've seen a ghost." I recounted the entire conversation with Sarah, my voice trembling with a mix of hurt and anger. John's face mirrored my own outrage. "That's unbelievable," he exclaimed. "After everything you've done for her?" We immediately called Beatrice. When she answered, her voice was chirpy and cheerful. "Amelia, darling, how's my dress coming along?" John snatched the phone from my hand. "Don't you darling us, Beatrice," he said, his voice cold and hard. "We know you didn't invite Amelia to the wedding." A surprised gasp escaped Beatrice. "Oh, honey," she cooed, feigning innocence. "Is that what this is about? Surely, you understand, it's a very exclusive affair. Just the cream of society, you know?" After these words, she hung up the phone. John and I exchanged heated glances as the phone call ended. The air crackled with indignation. Beatrice's audacity had pushed me over the edge. No way was I letting her walk all over me, not after all the blood, sweat, and tears poured into her precious wedding dress. A mischievous glint ignited in my eyes. Revenge, a delicious word, danced on my tongue. Beatrice wanted exclusivity? I'd give her exclusive, a wedding day surprise she wouldn't forget. The final fitting arrived, and Beatrice sashayed in, a whirlwind of fake smiles and designer sunglasses. This time, however, her usual demands were replaced by a nervous impatience. The wedding was 2 days away, and the pressure was clearly getting to her. "All right, darling," she cooed, inspecting the dress with a practiced eye. "Let's get this over with. I haven't got all day." The final fitting unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play. Beatrice, bless her oblivious heart, preened and fussed, demanding the most insignificant alterations. This time, though, I played the part of the patient seamstress to perfection, all the while suppressing a smile that threatened to erupt onto my face. "There's just one minor detail left," I lied smoothly, once she'd finally exhausted her list of imaginary flaws. "A small embellishment on the back that requires some delicate handwork. I'll finish it in 2 days." Beatrice, ever impatient, bristled at the delay. 2 days? Seriously, Amelia? Can't you just do it now? "It's a very intricate piece, darling," I countered, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. Trust me, it's best left untouched until the last minute. Besides, wouldn't you want your dress to look absolutely flawless when you walk down the aisle? Her vanity outweighed her suspicion. All right, she grumbled, finally relenting. Just make sure you get there early on the wedding day. I wouldn't want any last-minute hiccups. With a triumphant wave of her manicured hand, she sashayed out the door, leaving me alone with a mischievous grin plastered on my face. The air crackled with the thrill of rebellion. No way was I handing her the real dress after her little guest list stunt. The moment the door closed, I sprang into action. In the back room, a box, my secret weapon, awaited. I'd procured it earlier, its sturdy cardboard a blank canvas for my revenge masterpiece. But first, I needed a little something extra. Rummaging through my fabric scraps, I found a leftover piece, the cheapest, most uninspired polyester I could find, in a shade vaguely similar to Beatrice's ivory lace. With swift precision, I folded the fabric, creating a loose, flowing silhouette that mimicked the shape of the dress. It wouldn't be an exact replica, but that was part of the fun. This dress would be a caricature of Beatrice's inflated ego, a symbol of her shallowness and lack of respect. The wedding day arrived, a crisp spring morning buzzing with nervous anticipation. John and I parked discreetly across the street from Beatrice's house, a hive of frantic activity. Through the window, I could see her flitting around like a hyperactive hummingbird, barking orders at a team of flustered bridesmaids and stylists. Taking a deep breath, I hoisted the now christened surprise box onto my shoulder. It felt surprisingly light, a stark contrast to the emotional weight it carried. John squeezed my hand, a silent reassurance in his warm touch. We marched up the front steps and were greeted by a flustered maid of honor. Amelia? John? What are you two doing here so early? Beatrice requested I bring the dress at the venue, I explained, keeping my voice even. The maid of honor scurried off to relay the message, leaving me and John alone in the foyer. The air crackled with nervous energy, punctuated by the distant shouts of Beatrice barking orders. A moment later, Beatrice herself appeared, a whirlwind of tulle and barely concealed panic. Amelia, there you are. Thank goodness. Where's the dress? Right here, I said, hefting the box towards her. Beatrice, oblivious to the impending chaos, barked another order at a passing bridesmaid, and then she turned to us. John, you can stay. And you, Amelia, get out of the house, the dressmaker doesn't belong here. We did not argue or make scandals, just exited the house, the weight of the cardboard box replaced by a lightness in my chest. We returned to our car, the sounds of the bustling household fading behind us. John started the engine, a playful glint in his eyes. So, what now? He asked. Now, I said, a mischievous glint mirroring his. We wait for the fireworks. Little did we know, the fireworks had already begun. As we drove away, news of Beatrice's outrageous treatment of me spread through the house like wildfire. Her brother, already fuming over her exclusion of me from the guest list, was livid. His wife, Sarah, a close friend of mine, added fuel to the fire, recounting the details of Beatrice's arrogance. The result? A full-blown family brawl. John's brother and his wife stormed out, refusing to attend the wedding in protest. The news, of course, reached Beatrice amidst the chaos of getting ready. But in her self-absorbed world, the only thing that mattered was the dress. The doorbell's shrill ring sliced through the quiet comfort of our home, shattering the peaceful aftermath. John and I exchanged a surprised glance, a silent question hanging in the air. An hour had barely passed since we returned from Beatrice's chaotic house. What fresh drama could this be? With a deep breath, I opened the door, bracing myself for the unknown. My heart plummeted the moment I saw them, a fuming Beatrice, her usually perfectly coiffed hair askew, her mother, a picture of weary resignation, and a bewildered-looking fiancé flanking them. Beatrice, eyes blazing with fury, thrust the surprise box at me, the cardboard now crumpled and ripped. Inside, the cheap fabric lay exposed, a pathetic substitute for the dress she'd expected. "What the heck is this?" she shrieked, her voice laced with barely contained rage. That, my dear Beatrice, I replied, my voice calm but firm, is exactly what you deserve. Her mother, clearly mortified by the scene unfolding, stepped forward. Beatrice, calm down. What's going on here? Beatrice ignored her mother, her attention solely on me. You ruined everything. You sabotaged my wedding. Hold on a second, I interjected, raising a hand. Let's get something straight. You excluded me from your guest list, treated me like a glorified servant, and expected me to hand over a $3,000 dress for free. This little surprise, I tapped the crumpled box, is just a taste of your own medicine. Her face turned scarlet, a strangled gasp escaping her lips. She lunged towards me, fists clenched, but her mother grabbed her arm, holding her back. Don't even think about it, Beatrice, her mother hissed, her voice laced with disappointment. Beatrice, however, couldn't contain her fury. She whirled on her mother, yelling accusations. You're all in on this. Ruining my wedding day. The fiancé, witnessing this display of temper, looked as if he'd swallowed a lemon. Is this what I can expect after we get married? He said, his voice tight. Beatrice's tirade abruptly stopped. She stared at him, a flicker of dawning realization crossing her features. The fiancé, clearly disgusted by the entire scene, sighed heavily. This wedding is off, he declared, his voice flat. Beatrice's face contorted in a mixture of shock and disbelief. No, you can't cancel. We can work this out. He shook his head, his gaze unwavering. I deserve better than this drama. Goodbye, Beatrice. With that, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Beatrice speechless, her dream wedding crumbling around her. A stunned silence descended upon the porch. Beatrice's mother, shaking her head in disappointment, offered a weak apology before following the fiancé's path. Beatrice stood there, alone and defeated, the weight of her actions finally settling upon her. Without another word, she turned and trudged down the street, the wedding dress, or rather, the sad excuse for it, still clutched in her hand. John and I watched the scene unfold, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. Beatrice had gotten a harsh lesson in humility, and hopefully, it would be one she wouldn't soon forget. In my voice. Sometimes, a little cardboard box is all it takes to set things straight. As the last rays of the setting sun painted the sky in fiery hues, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah, her voice laced with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. Amelia, you won't believe the latest, she exclaimed. Beatrice went full meltdown on the wedding organizers. John and I exchanged a surprised glance. The drama, it seemed, wasn't over yet. Meltdown? I echoed, bracing myself for another story of Beatrice's self-absorption. Apparently, Sarah continued, she refused to pay them a dime since the wedding didn't happen. Caused a huge scene, yelling and screaming. The poor organizers had to call the cops. My jaw dropped. Beatrice, in her blind rage, had managed to turn a personal disaster into a public spectacle. The image of her arguing with the police was almost comical, if not a little sad. Did they arrest her? I asked, a morbid curiosity flickering within me. Not exactly, Sarah chuckled. But they issued her a hefty fine for disorderly conduct. Apparently, she wasn't too happy about spending her wedding night at the police station. John let out a snort of laughter. Serves her right, he muttered. The following days were a whirlwind of gossip and aftershocks. I reached out to Beatrice's fiancé, offering a sincere apology for the way things had ended. To my surprise, he was gracious. Honestly, Amelia, he said, his voice warm, I owe you a debt of gratitude. Seeing Beatrice's true colors saved me from a lifetime of misery. Beatrice's mother also contacted me. After explaining the situation in detail, I saw a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. The ordeal had clearly taken its toll on her, and a heavy silence hung between us before she spoke. I apologize for Beatrice's behavior, Amelia, she said, her voice strained. I should have done more to rein her in. It's not your fault, I replied gently. As for Beatrice herself, she became a social pariah. Humiliated and ostracized, she packed her bags and left the city, unable to bear the weight of her own actions. John and I, on the other hand, reveled in the newfound peace. The experience had brought us closer, a shared victory against arrogance and entitlement.